your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, The Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 Hooper and current teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids.
And I'm Omari for the second Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. Wes and Blake Silverman are doing great work over on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel on the Pin Down. Make sure you are checking out their podcasts over there. They go live often during the middle of the week, sometimes Wednesday, Thursday, but make sure you guys are watching and listening to their Pistons coverage. Obviously checking out Detroit Bad Boys, obviously reading O2's work on the Detroit Free Press, and a little bit slow right now, but over on the Motor City Hoops Substack, things will start to pick up some more. And I have multiple people that I think are going to come on and contribute this year as well. We took a break last week. I went on vacation. Obviously, it's off season right now. We're entering August. We got to get through a few weeks here. We have some fun episodes coming up for you guys. One, the original Omari Sankofa is going to join us at some point, I think this month. There's going to be one where I'm going to bring on my former college coach, and we're just going to talk basketball, guys. Like, it's not going to be very Piston centric, but I selfishly went to O2 and West and said, guys, I would really love to do this. What do you guys think? And they obliged with that. So we got some fun content. And then O2, we'll be right into training camp before we know it.
Yeah, we're like 8 weeks out roughly right now. It's always like that last week of September, first week of October. And I feel like this time of the year, it goes slow and fast at the same time. It's slow because there's hardly any news. And obviously the Pistons still have a few bits of news that will come out, probably at some point. But it's also kind of like you blink and you start watching football and then it's like, oh man, it's NBA season. So yeah, I think we're both, going to be kind of in and out over the next month. And it's already been, by Pistons standards, a pretty light offseason anyway. So, it'll be good to take a step back and we'll see if there's any news here for us to touch on before things die down a little bit.
Yeah, I was updating my personal spreadsheet. I have a Pistons cap sheet that I keep just so I can play around with numbers. Obviously, Keith Smith and Spotrac is awesome, and that's where everybody should be getting stuff. But I have my own Google sheet where I still their numbers, but it allows me to move people around and put in different numbers to play around with things. And I updated that the other day, and they do have 2 open roster spots, right? So there is something is going to happen, whether a 2-way guy gets promoted and then they add in a new 2-way. There's, a lot of the names we've talked about. I know this is going to be an Eastern Conference preview. So for anybody tuning in live right now, thank you. Anybody listening after the fact, this will be an Eastern Conference preview. So there's not going to just be, it won't be fully Piston centric. Obviously, we'll always pull in Pistons conversation, but there's going to be something, O2, right? We're going to get some sort of news, and a lot of the guys we've talked about adding to the roster are still out there. And I think at this point, those guys are probably looking around, seeing what's going to happen, in no rush at this point in the offseason, but things will pick back up. We got some general NBA news, right? Mikal Bridges extension, Luka extension. There was some NBA news, but for Detroit, it probably not a whole lot till they fill those roster spots up.
Yeah, probably not. It seems like a lot of the action in the league right now is kind of paused outside of the extensions, just with those restricted free agency scenarios still waiting to be resolved. I know there's been rumors that Al Horford, he's still unsigned, but there's a rumor that he's just waiting for the Golden State scenario with Kuminga to resolve. So
O2, for this exercise we were doing today, I did a Western Conference one just because I assume on game theory I'll have to at some time. I'm like, that Warriors roster is unbelievable. I didn't even know how to rank them because it's such a mess.
Yeah. Al Horford would be great for them because they desperately need anybody taller than 6'7" for one. But yeah, they also just don't have a lot of depth. And I don't know. As long as they have the 2 guys at the top, they'll be all right. But yeah, I don't know what to expect from them next season, to be honest.
It was hard to decide where to put them because of, the restricted free agency stuff is crazy, which there's a couple of those here in the Eastern Conference as we go through this. Obviously, Cam Thomas with the Nets, Quentin Grimes with the Philadelphia 76ers. So this is how this is going to work, guys. We're going to just run through teams and we're going to just kind of recap their offseason somewhat quickly. And then as we get throughout the episode, Wes has averaged our rankings. We're going to give you what those averages are. And then with a lot of the teams, especially when we can get in the Pistons range, we're going to talk about, okay, why are the Pistons not better than this team? Or how do they become better than that team? Or did they get past this offseason by a certain team? So let's just start here. I'm going to go by last season's regular season standings. 0-2 is how we're going to run through this. And again, we're just going to quickly recap. We're not going to give our rankings yet. We're just going to quickly recap. Cleveland Cavaliers finished first in the East last year. Obviously, we know how the playoffs ended. Year 2 coming of Kenny Atkinson. They have their core 4 locked in. Feel like for the most part, their rotation is locked in. I think the biggest thing around the Cavs 0-2 was they essentially chose Sam Merrill over Ty Jerome as a rotation piece off their bench.
Yeah, and then also traded for Lonzo Ball.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. That's probably the biggest to replace that Ty Jerome loss. That's a great point.
But beyond that, yeah, I mean, they're pretty much the same team for the most part. Like, I actually think like Lonzo, like he's bigger, he's better defensively. Like, obviously could really move the ball. And I think that he's actually a little bit of a better fit for them than Ty Jerome. Like, and Ty Jerome's not, like, he's a big guard, but, I don't think he brings the same thing defensively. And you probably need a bigger guard if you're going to keep Darius Garland. And there's some rumors about him. Part of me still kind of wonders if we're going to see one of those random, like, day before training camp out of nowhere trades. But, like, that's a team that, to me, probably would have made the Eastern Conference Finals if they had been healthy. And then that's just the thing for them. It's just been health. But otherwise, to me, that's just still be the top team in the conference for sure.
Yeah. So they definitely returning that core 4. Looks like they've stayed in for another year of that. They have long-term contracts on all of those guys. Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, and Allen. Lonzo Ball essentially replacing the minutes from Ty Jerome. You keep Merrill, Strus, DeAndre Hunter. They did bring in Larry Nance Jr. for some front court help. Next team, not so much status quo, is the Boston Celtics 0-2. They finished second in the Eastern Conference last year. Lots of change for the Celtics, obviously starting with the injury to Jason Tatum. They trade Drew Holiday to the Blazers. They trade Kristaps Porzingis to the Hawks, another team we'll obviously talk about in this. They bring in Anthony Simons and Georges Niang. I think this is a team that could sell at the deadline because I think they should be incentivized to get under the tax so they get out of the repeater situation. With that, they do still have Derek White, Jaylen Brown. I don't know who's starting at center. Maybe old friend Luka Garza. Celtics with quite the offseason after the Jason Tatum injury 0-2.
Yeah, they're taking a step back. We'll have to see to what extent, but especially with the Tatum injury that kind of forced them. It's the double whammy of the Tatum injury and like the second apron. Because even if Tatum were healthy, they still would have had to get off of Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis and, it just whittled down that, core. And like, I don't want to get into the whole second apron, discussion and this and that, but they just kind of got hit by, two of the worst things you get hit by at the same time. So they're going to take a step back. Like, we'll kind of get into our individual rankings later, but, I think we both have them like probably just on the edge of the playoff race at this point.
Yeah. I mean, so I think a little bit depends what they do with Anthony Simons. Like, there's still a talented roster here, especially in the backcourt. I think we could be in for a big Jaylen Brown year. Peyton Pritchard may shoot 15 threes a game. I just wonder, I just wonder if we get to the deadline and they're, moving off Simons as an expiring and, all of that. I believe I had it in my notes here. Yeah. And they do own their own 2026 draft pick, which I think is important for a Celtics team that may not be looking to go contend. Next team here was the Knicks, finished third. Obviously a team Pistons fans are very familiar with, especially after the playoffs. Essentially kind of ran it back, Omari. This is another team that, recently with the Mikal Bridges extension, they have locked in that starting lineup. Josh Hart has a team option in 27-28, but they've kind of locked those guys in. They bring in Gershon Yabusele, Jordan Clarkson, but for the most part, we're going to see the same Knicks team just with a different coach. That was the biggest thing for them this offseason.
Yeah. And like, I think they'll be at least as good, but they do have a real chance to be better because they still had a top offense last season. And now you bring in a coach who's known as more of an offensive guru and maybe could coax more out of the, Brunson Cat pairing, which, I think that was probably the biggest knock against Tibbs last season. It's just that Like, they weren't running a lot of pick and roll and Cat wasn't taking a lot of threes. So there's another level that I think that they could get to. And I think Jordan Clarkson could probably give them a little bit more than campaign. And I think that Yabusele is another really good rotation wing on a team that already has a lot of wings. So they're in good shape. We'll see how it plays out. But like, I think that they're really deep and they might have gotten a little bit better this offseason.
The Indiana Pacers finished fourth in the East, obviously made a run to the NBA Finals. Another team who was bit by the injury bug and then lost Miles Turner in free agency, something I did not think was going to happen. That was a big L for me. I did not think they would let him go. I don't know if the Tyrese Halliburton injury, I don't know how much that played into it, if they just didn't want to sign him long term like that, whatever. Again, like you mentioned, we will talk about our individual rankings and our collective rankings and the average of those. But this is a team that really dropped for me because I realized they still have Pascal Siakam and I love Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith, but you lost the engine of your offense and the floor spacing big. As much as I love Jay Huff as a low cost replacement to Miles Turner, a very different Indiana Pacers team, O2.
Yeah, I mean, they lost two of their top three guys over the offseason, either through injury or through free agency. And like, that's tough to come back from. You kind of hope that guys like Jarris Walker and Benedict Mathurin and, probably another young guy or two I'm not thinking of, can take a step forward and replace some of that. But that's really what their season hinges on. And otherwise, like, they're kind of in the same boat as the Celtics where like they're just going to take a significant step back. And I don't see any way around that without some other moves happening.
Yeah, I think for me with them, I still think they're going to win games because the style of play and the guys that really, fit that and play into that. Also worth noting, another team that does own their own 2026 draft pick. Thank you, New Orleans Pelicans. They could get to a point where they say like, hey, let's tank this out post trade deadline and work into the lottery odds a little bit better. So next team here is the Milwaukee Bucks. They finished fifth. Maybe the surprise of the offseason was signing Miles Turner as Brook Lopez left for the Western Conference. And then doing so, they stretched and waived and stretched Damian Lillard to a big number. I mean, it's not fair to Miles Turner, but essentially they're paying Miles Turner like $50 million a year because that is what they had to do to bring him in. Interesting team. They have a front court that, is talented. Honestly, they have Giannis because, and Giannis always is going to win you games. But a lot of questions in the backcourt, O2, as Damian Lillard with another injury situation now in Portland. Miles Turner replaces Brook Lopez.
Yeah, interesting offseason. I think that's the right word for it. You waived Damian Lillard, which was the new clear option. But if you decide like we have Giannis and we're going to go for it at all costs, then, I think that's probably the only way you could really go about that, rather than await Lillard coming back on one of the most devastating injuries you could suffer at age 35 or 36 or whatever, season that'll be for him. And he's on it's like 20 million something, in dead money per year. It's interesting because that's like 20 million, isn't quite what it used to be, so like maybe you could like withstand that, especially if you could get some young guys on cheaper deals. And like you've got Kyle Kuzma, maybe I don't know if he stays long term or maybe you try to find some sort of package to kind of round out the rest of your rotation. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Like I respect the commitment to just saying we have Giannis and we're still going to try to compete. And nobody would have predicted them getting, Miles Turner, not long before that deal ended up happening. So interesting. We'll see how it works out. But like, that's still a team with some talent. And, I think that's still the team you probably have to look out for on some level.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be fun. I'm interested to see where I didn't look in the chat to see where you guys have stuff ranked. So I'm interested to see where the averages end up and where you guys ended up on some of these teams. I will just say that where I have the Bucks ranked has almost 95% to do with Giannis Antetokounmpo being awesome at basketball still. I mean, through last season's conversation of SGA or Jokic MVP stuff, the season that Giannis had kind of got lost because if Giannis was the MVP last year, nobody would have questioned it in terms of when you just look at the raw numbers and what he put together. So Pistons obviously finished sixth. We don't need to go through and recap their offseason. We're going to talk about that plenty as we go through this. Most listeners, viewers of this kind of know that. And again, we'll touch on it throughout as we start to compare and contrast them against other teams. Next up, the Orlando Magic. a team that was injury riddled last season, sure, looking for more help this offseason or this upcoming season, and made a big splash move this offseason. Maybe the most surprising in turn. Well, I don't know. Like, I didn't see Damian Lillard being waived and stretched. So probably not the most surprising, but make the trade for Desmond Bane. Again, when you talk about like locking in cores, that's one thing I noticed with some of the top teams is they have cores locked in. And this is another team that, whether you like it or not, Franz, Bane, Suggs, Paolo are all locked in. And then they still have some real young, interesting pieces. This will be a fun team to talk about when we really get into it, Omari, but a pretty big offseason adding Desmond Bane for the Magic.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a team that finished 41-41, with their main guys banged up all season, with Paolo missing like half the season or however many, games he missed. And they were still the number 2 defense, still made the playoffs. And now with better health, like knock on wood, and then you go and get Desmond Bane, who like addresses all of your weaknesses on offense, like literally all of them. Everything you struggled with last season, he comes in and he, patches while also still giving you some size and utility on defense. You still got your young guys. Like, I thought they had a good draft, and just good offseason. They had a great offseason. They're perfectly primed to take a leap next year. It's just the only question is where they rank. But to me, like, that's very, very clearly a top 4 team in the East.
Yeah. Next up here on the rankings, the Atlanta Hawks finished 8th, another team that made real moves this offseason. And this is a team, I think this will be the most highly discussed team. I will just like spoil a little bit here. I love what Atlanta did. I was already liking this roster. People know I love Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So adding him to this, health will be a big part of the conversations around a lot of this stuff. But, they made the move where they add Kristaps Porzingis. I think that could be a huge boom or bust type of move. As we all know, the injury situation and health situation with Kristaps, but they also add Nickeil Alexander-Walker. When people talk about what does a trade exception get you, Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a very good example of that. That ended up being a sign-in trade of some sort that they moved him into a trade exception they had. They added old Piston Luke Kennard. Just a really interesting team around Trae Young now, who if healthy, it's going to be hard to have an excuse of them not winning, and just real quick here, Trae Young has a player option in 26-27. It'll be fascinating to see how that ends up. Steven, I think you pretty much took the rankings off my board. Ours are very close down there. So thoughts on what Atlanta did this offseason before we really get into it?
Yeah, I mean, they might have had the best offseason of any team. I put Orlando in there too, just because I really like the Bane trade. But, that's a really interesting team that they put together. You've got a lot of big, wings around like Trae Young who could shoot and are athletic. And, you've got some decent bigs. Like I thought Reese Shea really got better as the year went on last year. And like, that's going to be a fun team. I think it's like, this is the ideal kind of roster you want to build around a guy like Trae Young. Like you just want to give him as many targets as possible to, move the ball, cover for him defensively to the extent that you can. And they're going to move up. So I'm curious to see how much we differ as far as how much they will, but absolutely they got way better this offseason.
Chicago's next. We can go through these next ones a little bit faster. I don't think their off seasons were as much. I mean, not a whole lot here. Traded Lonzo Ball for Isaac Okoro, drafted Noah Essengay. Again, I'm not trying to spoil much here. Like just not a team I'm overly interested in. I'm not sure where they're going or what they're doing. Lots of guys on expiring deals. I think the biggest storyline with them is one we don't need to get into, which is the Josh Giddey contract situation. But yeah, I'm kind of cool on Chicago too.
Yeah, they're fine. They have a roster. They'll they'll win some games.
Yeah.
I know that's where they're at.
Yeah. Miami is the next team here that I do think is a little more interesting to talk about because they do still have talent. Bam Adebayo, obviously, they make the move for Norman Powell, which as much as I like that move for the Clippers, because you replace Norman Powell is better, but you trade out Norman Powell for Bradley Beal, but then they also got John Collins, and we don't need to get into all of that, but I feel like the Heat got Norman Powell for nothing. Like I don't know Kyle Anderson. And so anyway, interesting backcourt. Like, here's what I'll say about Miami real quick. They have the group of Tyler Hero, Norm Powell, Andrew Wiggins, Bam, and Khalil Ware could be really fun. I don't know how it all looks and works, but it is a team that's interesting, O2, with a really, really good coach who's entering his 18th year with the Heat. Spoelstra's been there for 18 years this upcoming season. So
yeah, I remember when like 18 years was like this unimaginable number for Pop.
Yes.
And like now Spo is like, right, that's crazy. Yeah, they've got a very solid front five. You know, I don't know if they've got beyond that, but you know, they're kind of like in that third tier where, you know, they'll win some games. They might flirt with the play-in. You know, if we find a bigger move, I don't know if their ceiling is anything higher than that, but they've got Spo, so you never know.
Yep. The next team here was the Toronto Raptors, a team that didn't do a whole lot in the offseason, to be honest. They made their move at the deadline, acquiring Brandon Ingram, obviously had draft picks. I think this is a team that, like, they're just going to see what they have. I don't love how the roster fits together, but it is a talented roster with all of Scotty Barnes, B.I., Quickly, Barrett, Pirtle. I guess they did give Pirtle an extension this offseason. Grady Dick, Jacoby Walter, Jamal Shed. Like, they have all of these names. I just don't know how it all works together, but it is a talented group of players, O2.
Yeah, it's a talented group of players. I may be a little bit higher on them than the average, just because like they're just solid from top to bottom. Like at every position, they've got like at least one or two guys there. We'll see. Like I truly don't know what to expect from them, but like I don't hate that roster at all.
Brooklyn Nets are the next one here. Their big move was trading Cam Johnson, bringing in Michael Porter Jr. and his contract. Obviously a guy that can still be productive as well. I don't hate Porter Jr. for them in terms of adding floor spacing for a young rebuilding team. Sound familiar for Pistons fans? I think they would understand the value of that. But man, the rest of this roster is something. And they drafted 5 first-round picks, 4 of which need the ball in their hands to be at their best. So spoiler alert, I'm not a huge fan of the Brooklyn Nets roster right now, although I do love Jordy Fernandez, their coach.
Yeah, I'm getting like the energy I'm getting from this team is like process era Sixers, where they're just experimenting and just throwing stuff, and they're not too concerned about the product. It's more so about, you know, the process of just getting guys who might be interesting. So I wouldn't want to have to watch that team every night next season, but we'll see where they are in 2 years, I guess.
Philadelphia 76ers, health, right? Like, we'll get into this. This is a team that we'll talk about in the Pistons range quite a bit. You know, I don't know, VJ Edgecombe obviously is a huge addition, but he is a rookie. It really comes down to health beyond that. Not a whole lot of big moves outside of that for the Sixers.
Yeah, it's just health. I mean, that's really it. You know, if Embiid is Embiid, they'll be in the mix. If he's not, then, probably look like last season. So we'll just see. They
were the hardest team for me to rank because I'm like, I'm too low if they're healthy. I'm too high if they're not. So I just put them in the middle of that range. The last 2 teams, first, the Charlotte Hornets. Interesting roster here, O2. Like, when you look through it, it's like, okay, if guys are healthy, I like Colin Sexton. I like Josh Green as a guy off the bench. Brandon Miller coming back for year 3. I really like their draft. I have no idea what their front court is going to be and who's going to start at center, but it's a team that's, again, like the roster can fit together a little bit. I just don't think they have the front court to really compete, but they could be a surprise team if LaMelo's healthy and things come together the right way.
Yeah, I could see them getting hot in like March, and it's like, okay, they won, 12 of their last 24 or whatever, and they've got some momentum going into next season. Like, I like their roster. I think LaMelo is like, if he were on any team but Charlotte, and he's still like an enormously popular player, but like his main thing has just been health. Like, whenever he's been on the floor, like I think he's been pretty electric. So fun team. If nothing else, I think they'll be fun to watch.
And the last team here is obviously the Washington Wizards. This is a team that is full rebuild, similar to the Brooklyn Nets. Lots of young, talented players. I think my biggest concern with the Wizards is I don't look at any of those young, talented players and think superstar. I think that's the biggest thing they're missing right now is, okay, I like Trey Johnson. I love Alex Sarr. Bub Carrington has been good. I thought Keyshawn George defensively was really impressive at Summer League. But are any of those guys your quote unquote Cade Cunningham? You know what I mean? And I don't know that I can point to any of those guys. I'm also slightly nervous they end up trading away buying out all of their vets. I kind of like the roster more whenever they had more vets on it to round out those things. And they're not just playing young guys. Again, as Pistons followers, content creators, beat writers, we have seen this before and we understand the worries with that. But this full rebuild team, David Barth here. Enjoy listening to you guys from Egypt. Let's go. I love it. I always love, listen, I love everybody that's watching from here in America, but it's always kind of cool whenever you guys have people from outside the country. So quick thoughts on the Wizards offseason 02.
I like their move for Cam Whitmore.
Yeah, sure.
You know, I like some of the guys on that team. And I mean, like they're in pure rebuild mode, but like I like their offseason process. And, you know, it seems like they have some semblance of a direction, but they're going to be pretty bad next season. So, you know, it's all about that top three next season. It's all about Cam Boozer for him.
Yeah, there we go. All right, AJ Jabanza for me. No, that'll be fun to discuss all year. Okay, so that's the recap there. We got it done in less than 30. That's honestly pretty good, guys. I feel like if you are into this in general, that's a pretty good Eastern Conference recap of what teams did and all of that. When we come back, we are going to give you guys our average rankings, and then we'll each kind of say, okay, this is where I had them. This is where O2 had them. Wes will drop it in the chat and remind us. And the first couple, we're probably not going to talk Detroit as much, and then we'll get into, okay, why do we think Detroit is better? Why do we not? You guys in the comments, I've already seen some of them. You're going to be mad. I assume we'll have the Knicks above the Pistons, so some of you guys are going to yell at us for that. So I'll be interested to see why you guys think Detroit should be better than the Knicks. This will be a fun rest of the episode, guys. A lot there to preview. We'll get into it right after this.
All right. We are right back on segment 2, and we both had our individual rankings for the top 11 or 12 of the East. Bryce, I'm going to go ahead and throw it back to you, and then we can kind of get into our debate here.
Real quick, I keep seeing this. Wes, O2, can we confirm Dennis back on the two-way?
Yeah. Keith Smith did, report that right before we started. I know that there was, he was good at Summer League. He really came on strong towards the end of the G League. And, he's a guy that could be a guy for the team going forward. We'll see how he looks with the Crews next season, but no big surprise there. It seemed like the Pistons were interested on keeping him and continuing to allow him to develop.
Yeah, I mean, rightfully so. Had a great summer league. Okay, we're going to get into it right now. Wes is going to throw up the top team and our average. So what you see on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, watching live right now or whatever, is our averages. So Wes did all of that behind the scenes. And then again, especially the teams that maybe we're a little bit different on, then we'll discuss. I'll let you guys know where I had them, O2 can, all of that. So the first team in our averages for our Eastern Conference ranking is I believe would probably be the Cleveland Cavaliers are the number one team. So that's where I had them. Is that where you had them as well, O2?
I also had the Cavs number one.
And Wes will let us know if he did. Listen, this is a team with 3 straight playoff appearances. They won 64 games last year. Year 2 of Kenny Atkinson. I mentioned the core 4 is locked in. This didn't take me very long, O2. I mean, it truly didn't.
Yeah. I mean, they were the best team in the East last year. No one, to me, on paper, clearly surpassed them, and it's just about health for them. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. That should be the best team, and to be a Eastern Conference favorite as long as they can stay healthy. Yeah,
I mean, this is where Detroit is aiming for. I don't think we need to get into this debate right now. We may a little bit for number 2 team, which Wes told me all of us had the top same 3. So this will be fairly easy as we go through these. Our number 2 team then was the team that I think some people are not going to be overly happy about, but the New York Knicks are the second team in our average ranking here. We talked about this again. Same thing. Core 4 locked in. This is, another year of these guys together. I will say this. Here is my concern. The depth is still a concern in terms of a deep playoff run, but this is a team with 3 straight Eastern Conference semifinals. Last year, they went to the Eastern Conference finals. They've won 47, 50, 51 games. They do have a new coach, which will be interesting. But I think when you just look at the overall talent of the New York Knicks, this is the number 2. This was a tier break for me. I had the Cavs and the Knicks in my top tier.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. And to me, this is a team that could only get better. They traded for Cat right before training camp last season. It might have been after camp. I don't even know. I just think it was at the beginning of October. And that was not a Tibbs roster last season. It just wasn't. That's not a roster that plays Tibbs style basketball. They were still top 10, I believe, on both ends of the floor. They were still really good offensively, which when you have Cat and Brunson, you're just going to be a good offensive team. But there's more that could get out of that partnership. I think they got a little bit deeper with Yabusele and Jordan Clarkson. And it's just a good, deep, team that's now been a bit battle tested in the playoffs. And now they have a full season. They have a full playoff run. They have a full offseason under their belt. Now they have a coaching staff coming in fresh, that can kind of bring a new approach to getting this all to kind of fit together. And I think the roster fits Mike Brown's style of basketball more than Tibbs' style of basketball. Like, they probably should lean into the offensive end a bit more. So that's a good team. Like, I think, honestly, they could challenge the Cavs for number one, especially just with the depth they have on the wing. And I don't have anything else to add except, like, that's going to be a really good team. Like, I would be shocked if they'd add a good amount of wins compared to what they had last year.
So number 3 on our list also was all the same. I don't think we had a differ until number 4, which will be interesting. But at number 3, we all had the Orlando Magic. And I think this is probably where we can start to have the conversation of, okay, why do we think Orlando is maybe a touch above Detroit in this situation? My thing here is, like, you just look at how this team has grown. I think they're just like 1 year ahead of Detroit for me, Omari, in terms of they went from 22 wins to 34 to 47. They stepped back with 41 wins last year, but, like, we know that was a lot to do with injuries. Here's another big thing for me. This is year 5 of Jamal Mosley in Orlando. We're only getting year 2 of JB Bickerstaff in Detroit. And I think that's a good thing, but year 5 of what Mosley has done there, again, I mentioned already, their core 4 is locked in. They very much have their identity, which is on the defensive end, and they have a young roster of rotation players with Anthony Black, the draft picks this year, Tristan Da Silva, the full center, rotation and compliments. I really like this Orlando team.
Yeah, I mean, I think you pretty much said it. The bottom line is they were the best defense not named Oklahoma City last year. And, like, you add health, and then, like, you add Desmond Bane, who, again, like, I think he just literally checks every single box of, like, what they needed in a backcourt partner for Jalen Suggs. And also just has an elite shooter. Like, he's going to be really, really good for them. Like, I could see him being in, like, the all-star conversation, to be honest, which, I mean, with Franz and Paolo too, there's going to be some competition, but that's a good team. I don't know if they're going to be dramatically better than the Pistons. I don't even know if there's a big gap between those two teams in my mind, to be honest. Like, this is probably the start of, like, that next tier for us. But long story short, that's going to be a good team. Like, that's going to be a really good team next season.
Here's my question. Does it bother you that Orlando has, quote unquote, jumped Detroit? Because it doesn't bother me, because I felt like Orlando has been a step ahead of Detroit anyway. Like, they've known a little bit more about their core. They've had their head coach in place for a little bit longer. I'm okay. Yeah, this is a good point from Tyus Jones also there to run backup point guard for that team. I'm not worried that they have jumped Detroit. Like you said, I don't think it's a huge gap. And I think, like, the biggest thing for Detroit here is Cade Cunningham is the best player between the two teams. Like, that's the ultimate trump card with a lot of these conversations we're going to have, right? Is Cade Cunningham is the best player in the conversations. But does it worry you that Orlando has, quote unquote, leapfrogged Detroit, or you think Detroit missed the boat by, quote unquote, allowing that to happen? I agree with Michael here that Orlando had so many missed games last season. Detroit jumped them because I agree. I think Orlando has always been 1 year ahead, even though Detroit finished above them last year.
That's what I was going to say. Like, in my mind, Orlando's been a year or two ahead of their process anyway. And if Paolo's healthy last season, they get a few more games from Franz, I think they win more games than the Pistons. So, like, you have to consider just the extent that, like, last season's turnaround has changed our perception of where the Pistons are as a franchise. Orlando's salary cap situation, the people talk about, well, why didn't the Pistons make a move for for a player like Desmond Bane and Orlando did? Where Orlando's already paid Paolo, they've already paid Franz, they've already paid Jalen Suggs. So they've invested deeply into this core already. They're completely locked in. And that's because they started drafting these guys before the Pistons got their core together. So when you're locked into that extent, like, you need to maximize your salary. And that's why they gave up draft picks to get off of, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and essentially turned him into a much better version in Desmond Bane, because you're locked into this core. So now you've got to start, digging into your draft capital to upgrade the fringes of the roster and get into, like, that next stage. And the Pistons are not going to be there realistically until next season, because, so then assuming you extend, Ivy and Duran, like, that's where those deals will begin to kick in. And now you're starting to have to make those win now moves to maximize the core that you've locked yourself into. But that's essentially where I'm at with Orlando. They were already ahead in their process. Despite the injuries they had last season, they were still a top 2 defense, and they only won 3 fewer games than the Pistons. They were 41-41. So in my mind, they were essentially on the same tier last season anyway, and they got better. So could the Pistons leapfrog them still? Sure. The Pistons, again, they have nowhere to go but up. But I think Orlando would have been an Eastern Conference Finals contender had they been healthy last season. So you add Bane to that, and to me, that pretty clearly puts them into that next level.
And Wes looked it up. The Magic actually still won the season series with Detroit last year, 2-1. So yeah. I'm with you 100%. This is Orlando went through last year, as YouTube user brings up, what's an awful offense. So they found their identity. They found their young pieces. I'm really high on Paolo. I know some people question him. Go look at his playoff numbers, and I know it's only 10 games or whatever. I think Paolo's awesome. I had him number 1 in that draft, and all of that.
I think he'll end up being matchup proof just because of his strength and handle at 6'10", especially if he could knock down shots. He's going to be good.
Thanks, Downtown Deuce taps in here, says drop a like. We appreciate you tuning in. I think I'm going to join over there here before long. He hit me up the other day. I was on vacation, so make sure you're listening to everything.
Had me on recently, so check that out.
Make sure you're checking that out and everything he's putting out and doing. But yeah, last year they went through it and they realized this is what we're missing. This is what we need. And I think that's what Detroit is going to find out this year. And that's the thing. To me, what I've learned about Detroit was the losing wasn't the biggest, that sucked for the fans, Omari. The last 3 years of those couple years especially, it wasn't the losing, it was the lack of data collection. It was Cade missing a whole year and not figuring, even though I think we all stayed believers, it was even J.I.'s injury last year, Asar not getting an offseason, all of those things I think were even more impactful. Hiring the wrong coach. It all contributed to losing, but it wasn't the actual losing. It was the lack of data they were getting to decide, what do we need? What do we have? What do we need to go get? Orlando's already in that spot that they know, as YouTube user says, this may fall on its face. Bane may not be enough. Maybe Franz not being able to shoot threes. Paolo struggling from 3. If Suggs doesn't get his 3-pointer back, it may not be enough, but they know what they need, and I don't blame them for going for it. So before we go to break, we're going to drop our 4th team here, which was our first discrepancy. And it is the Atlanta Hawks, end up at number 4. You guys can yell at me and Wes for that. Your guy O2 had Detroit at number 4. So Atlanta Hawks are number 4 on our list here. We are going to debate and discuss this. I want to hear why O2 has Detroit ahead of them right after this.
All right, we are back with segment 3. You guys can, give me the pat on the back and root for me in this podcast episode, because I had the Pistons 4th on my list, and Bryce and Wes had the Pistons 5th behind the Atlanta Hawks. I'm going to give the floor back to Bryce, because we both love the Hawks offseason, but I'm curious to hear what elevates it just a little bit more.
So here's the thing, O2. There's 2 teams right now that I'm too high on after the offseason. In the Eastern Conference, it's the Atlanta Hawks. In the Western Conference, it's the Los Angeles Clippers. And both have the potential to make me look like an idiot, because both have plenty of question marks. I think the Clippers probably more in terms of injury type situation and the age of that roster. I just thought this Atlanta team was already building something really. Here's what I love their roster construction, O2. I think that's why I like the Hawks. They have Trae Young, and for his faults and all of that, and he has real faults. And Wesley 13 says Bryce and Wes hate the Pistons, confirmed. Yes. And so he has his faults, but I love that wing room. You have Dyson Daniels, who is not just an all defensive player, has real offensive juice that he showed this year. I think Reese Shea is going to take another step forward, 2-way player. Jalen Johnson, I think, is the forgotten player in all of this. Jalen Johnson is awesome and missed a lot of last year. And then they bring in more wing help with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who is a 2-way player and can also play on the ball a little bit. You bring in Luke Kennard to space the floor and play a little bit of ball handling when you need it. The big question, and this is totally fair, is the big man. If Kristaps is healthy, Like, I would be higher on this team. But what I do like is you still have Onyeka to play the center spot, and, Asa Newell will be able to play some minutes here and there. So I understand the questions here, but I just love the way they've constructed the roster, I think is why I'm so high on them.
I still like Kobe Bufkin too.
Yeah, sure.
And I did have the Hawks 5th on my list, so I don't have like a gap between the Hawks and the Pistons, really. I honestly kind of see them as being in a similar tier along with the Magic. Maybe the Magic are like a little bit of a half step ahead, but like for the most part, in the same tier. I think the Hawks are going to be good for all the reasons you mentioned. Like, to me, this is a team that like has a real shot to win 44 plus games, assuming they have good health. I also agree. Like, I think Kristaps is sort of the swing factor for their season, just because he takes their big rotation from, okay to like really, really good. And I just don't know what to expect from Kristaps, to be honest. Like, he was kind of limited by like some viral illness or something last season. And that on top of the physical issues he's had, that just doesn't sound very good. But otherwise, they don't really have a lot of holes. Like, they have plus defenders at every single position. Like you mentioned, Dyson Daniels. Part of the reason too is because like as good as Dyson is defensively, like he cannot check Cade, and like whenever they've gone against each other, Cade's like on that matchup. So
hey, that has skewed my defensive player of the year and all defensive team rankings, because
it skewed mine too.
Whenever I do that on Game Theory, I'm always lower and people hate me. And I'm like, have you watched Cade Cunningham cook that dude?
Yeah.
He cannot guard him.
Yeah.
So that is facts. That is very true.
Yeah. No, he can't do anything with Cade. So I played into it too, but they are essentially on the same tier for me though. Like, the Hawks are going to be good. I love their roster. I think they had a monster offseason, and they're going to take a real step forward.
The other thing I want to point out is like, this is a team that has consistently won 41, 43, 41, 36, 40. Not maybe the numbers you would want, but it's not like they're trying to take a jump from 25 wins to 50 or something like that. And it is year 3 of Quinn Snyder. So it will be interesting. And I think what's fascinating to me is, like I mentioned, Trae Young on a player option after this season. So if this doesn't go well, if Trae can't get it done with this roster, especially if healthy, we'll see what decisions they end up making there. At number 5, we finally get to talk about the team that we all know the most, and that is the Detroit Pistons. They finish here. I had them 5. Wes actually at 5 had the Milwaukee Bucks. So you guys can all hate Wes and not me anymore. You guys can steer your hatred there. I do think, that we talked about that Orlando. I think those top 3 teams, especially, they have their core 4 guys. They've been locked in. I think the coaching thing kind of stood out to me a little bit as well. Like with the Magic and the Hawks, those guys have been there just a little bit longer. I think that stuff does build at least for a few years. Listen, Detroit did exactly what I wanted them to do. Trajan did exactly what I would have wanted him to do. He essentially ran it back. It's just with different guys. I want to see what this roster looks like with a full offseason of Asar Thompson, what Ron Holland looks like with an offseason, a summer league, a rookie year where he played all of those minutes, and Jaden Ivey coming back. So like, I have them at 5. I think anywhere in this range is completely fair for them. And I think it's where they should be until we see, like, if J.I. comes back and he averages 20 a game, shooting 38% from 3, and Asar, takes a step, and Ron takes a step, and JD is the defender that he was down the stretch and in the playoffs, they are going to compete for a top 4 seed. And I hope that's what we see, but we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, the Pistons are deep, I think, especially relative to like recent iterations of the roster. Like, there's not really a positional point I think they're weaker in, except maybe power forward. And we'll see if they end up adding a backup 4 at some point. But they should only get better. Kay's going to get better. Ron especially is only going to get better, and he did exactly what you wanted see from him at Summer League, just dominating on both ends. J.I. is back and healthy. Duren is only going to get better. Like, he turns, I believe, 22 this season, so he's still like really young. Whatever level he can get to. They've got the ingredients. Like, I think Duncan Robinson and Karras are going to be great fits for them. So they're in a good spot. Like, it really just, like, I think relative to other teams in their bracket, like, they didn't change as much. So, like, I think that kind of plays into it too, is like, they're mostly just relying on internal development. But they won 44 games last season, a complete turnaround from the year before, like, as like a really young, really untested team. So again, like this is a team that absolutely, like I have them for, like I think I trust them a little bit more than Atlanta and some other teams right now. But like you've got to like what they're building. And the bottom line for me is, especially if Asar and Ron could take that step forward, then I think that like that really changes the ceiling for what this team could get to.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I think me having them at 5 is more about liking what Orlando did, especially healthy, and just kind of being high on what the Hawks have done. Again, to me, the thing here, though, is Cade Cunningham can make the argument as the best player that we've talked about so far on the episode in terms of once we've got into these rankings. And that is always a huge X factor and something that they can stand on. To me, it's when you look at Orlando 1 through 4, who is the Pistons' second best player in 25-26? I think if we put that to the chat or on a Twitter poll, you would get 25%, 25% between Asar Thompson and Jaden Ivey. And you may get a Jalen Duren sprinkled in there. Or maybe, Tobias Harris,
you might get a Ron.
You might get who knows? Maybe Karis LeVert is an answer out there. I mean, because here's the thing, guys. Some people would say Malik Beasley was their second best player last year. And so that's my thing is, I guess I'm giving a little bit to teams that have I think Jalen Johnson is awesome. And so why I would take Cade over Trey, I think Jalen Johnson and then Dyson Daniels and Risa Shea and Nah and like those guys just on the wing as two-way players. I think that's another factor as well. What does Asar become offensively? What does JD become defensively? What does Ron become offensively? I just know what those guys are. Those other guys like on the Hawks, on the Magic, I guess you could push back the Magic offensively, have some questions. So I'm cool with them being right here. And here's the thing. I don't think this is a step back or a negative, right? If they finish 5th and you find out exactly who these guys are, that's huge. And if you get to the deadline and it's going really well, but then you're ready to make a move, even better, right? You can make a move at the deadline, or you could wait till the offseason like Orlando did with Desmond Bane. Just probably depends on health a little bit. So I like this spot for Detroit. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So West, real quick, to defend myself, I like the Pistons offseason. Think they did a great job making sure they are about as talented as last year. Magic, Bucks added talent, and Detroit can't seem to beat those teams. 76ers being healthy is scary, of course. And so Wes said, I think the win total is about the same as last year. So number 6 now, let's keep moving forward because we'll be able to debate these teams as well, is the Milwaukee Bucks. You had the Bucks here at 6. So I think all you and I did was flip the Pistons and the Hawks. I had the Bucks here at 6. Wes had the 76ers here at 6. So your thoughts on the Bucks? Why them one spot below the Detroit Pistons 0-2?
Yeah, I mean, they're one spot below because they have Giannis. And like, as long as they have Giannis, they're going to win a lot of games. And that's really just it. I mean, they have Giannis, and the roster around Giannis is like not a bad roster. I mean, I'm looking at it now, and their second best guy obviously is Miles Turner. You've still got Bobby Portis. So you've got Kuzma. So you've got a pretty interesting rotation of like, like forwards and like big kind of hybrid guys. Like they added.
Do the backcourt now, Omari.
Yeah, like, and that's what I'm looking at now. Like, you got Gary Trent Jr., so he can shoot it, obviously. You got Cole Anthony, who I think is solid. You got Gary Harris, who, could, still do some stuff on both sides. You've got Kevin Porter Jr., and they brought back Ryan Rollins, right?
Yep, they did. Yep.
You got some guys, and then you've got Taurean Prince, and he's like your only wing, like, other than Gary Harris, so. Yeah,
it's like the Phoenix Suns. The Suns are a little bit different because they're loaded at shooting guard and center, but the Bucks are a little bit similar. And where it's like, it seems like all of their talent is. And here's the other thing we talk about: talent. Kuzma was awful in Milwaukee last. Like he wasn't even good there last year. So listen, this is straight Giannis play for me. Having them at 6.
Yeah. This
team has made the playoffs every year since year 4 of Giannis. That's 9 straight through all the roster coaching changes. I made my pitch for Giannis as like had an MVP caliber type, whatever season. Yeah. Michael says, Omari putting a lot of work to say anything nice about the backcourt. I love it. So, hey, I thought Ryan Rollins did a nice job. So yes,
I like Ryan Rollins. Yeah.
Rob, they should start Giannis at point guard. They might have to start Giannis at point guard. So then they can start Kuzma at the 3, Portis at the 4, and Turner at the 5. I mean,
it's a nasty roster. Like, there's not a lot of positional fit. They're just going to have to put their best 5 out there in some capacity and just hope for the best. But,
and I think the thing with it, there's not even a ton of young guys that's like, well, maybe like, I didn't think Tyler Smith was good at summer league. AJ Green is a real floor spacer. Like, that's a nice player.
Yeah, they have AJ Green.
Yeah. Andre Jackson Jr. hasn't really been able to figure it out. So it's just, this is Giannis. Yeah. I mean, like, this is fully Giannis for me. Point Giannis, like the Jason Kidd days all over again. So yeah, we're going there. All right. And I think because of that, that's why we have Detroit over Milwaukee, right? It's just like, at this point, Giannis is still better than Cade Cunningham, but the rest of the Pistons roster, the collective of that, like, I'm comfortable. Giannis may put to just an unreal season, but that's why I have Detroit over Milwaukee is this is one that Giannis is the only thing there that gives him a chance. I don't know how, is that was kind of your thinking as well, O2?
Yeah, I mean, it's just Giannis. Like, you've got enough guys around him who could shoot, and you're going to have some defense with Miles Turner. But like, beyond that, it's just, you're just putting guys around him who could like shoot. Like, they really don't have no other defense really outside of Giannis either and Miles Turner. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I have him at 6, but like, if Giannis were to miss any time, then like, good night, essentially. So,
and yeah, so Steven says, I read the Bucks defense was better without Lillard than with. Should we not I mean, think that's probably true, but I mean, what's the offense going to be, without any ball handling outside of Giannis? And again, I don't know that the defense is littered with good defenders. You kind of even those backcourt guys, I don't look at Gary Trent Jr. and think defender. Taurean Prince isn't that guy anymore. Cole Anthony plays hard, extremely hard, but
they've got like nobody between 6'4" and 6'8" except Taurean Prince, by the way. Like, that's not good.
Yeah. Okay. So next is number 7, and that ends up being the variance of the Philadelphia 76ers. So, you had the Sixers 7. I had the Heat actually here at 7, and then I have the Sixers the next spot. I had no idea what to do with them. This is where Wes has the Pistons right here at 7. So Wes, you had the Sixers at 6. So kind of just changing spots here a little bit. Listen, I think on paper, let me tell you this. If healthy, you would have the Sixers above the Pistons, right, O2?
Fully healthy, yeah. Like, because they've actually got depth. Like, you keep in mind, like, they had Jared McCain last year.
Robbie says, do we trust Philly to stay healthy? We do not, Robbie. Like,
no, we don't. No,
plain and simple,
not.
We do not.
No.
Yeah.
No, but a healthy version of this team on paper, like, should be better. And they got VJ Edgecombe. Like, I think he's going to be good. Like, they've got a team. It just comes down to Joel Embiid and how many games he can play and how he looks in those games. And that's, like, to me, the ultimate X factor in the entire conference. But even if you get like half of like a healthy Embiid for the season, that's still a decent team just because like they've got some depth. So like 7 to me feels like the natural range. Anywhere between 7 and 9 probably is a more reasonable guess, assuming you get maybe 50 games from Embiid. But you can't assume that. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what to do with them because I'm like, this team. I'm gonna look stupid if Embiid, like, even if PG's not healthy, which I didn't think PG looked good even when he was. I guess if he was healthy last year, when he played, I didn't think he looked great last year anyway. It's like they could have used Tobias Harris or something. But even if Embiid's just healthy, like, that would go a long way. I love this young backcourt of Maxey and Edgecombe and Jared McCain.
Yeah.
So like, but how far does that take you without Paul? Like, what are the other wings on the roster? I mean, Oubre, it's not like they have a great backup plan at center if Embiid's not there. You're starting Drummond, who wasn't great last year, or a Dembona. I like
Janai Broom.
So that's the thing. Here's the thing. Thank you. YouTube user caught it. I appreciate it. My Tobias Harris joke. I actually think they've done well on the margins in drafting. That's what's crazy is I love the Edgecombe pick. Obviously, they, lotteried into that. Jared McCain looks like a home run selection. Justin Edwards in the second round was a home run. Janai Broom, I think, is going to be a solid player. They've actually done well on the margins. Just shows that your stars have to be stars. And more importantly, maybe they have to be available to be stars. And this team just hasn't had that. So if healthy, really good. If not, I think that backcourt will still be fun. And also got like Quentin Grimes' situation is still playing out there. So we'll see how that plays out for them. But I think this is a reasonable spot for Philly as things stand right now. And that's, I think, why we had Detroit above Philly. West had them right there. I think we would all agree it's a health play. If healthy, they're going to be better than Detroit, but odds say they're not going to be healthy enough to do it. And so Detroit will finish above them. I also want to quickly mention here that pick to OKC is only top 4 protected this year. And so like the incentive of tanking, whatever, just something to keep in mind with that. So next here, as we go, are we going to keep going? We want to shut it off there. Is there any other? I think Miami is a team we need to talk about. I don't know.
We can see where we're at like 9 and 10 too. Get Indiana in there.
Okay. So Boston is up next. Okay. Wes will let me know. So you guys were much lower on Miami than me. So that's probably the biggest difference for all of us. So I had Boston right at 9. So this is a little bit higher for me. This is still an interesting talent with Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Anthony Simons right now. Again, like Luka Garza legit may start games at center for them, but I think it's a team that could still end up in the play-in somewhere. Quick mention, O2, they do have their own 2026 draft pick. So if they wanted to go for it, they could go for a high draft pick.
Yeah. So I think I was lower on Boston. I had them 10. And I mean, it's just, you have Derek White and like outside of Jaylen Brown, like that's just not a good roster. Like it's just not. Like, I think they're one of those teams that's like one injury away from like being in the Cam Boozer discussion, to be honest. Like they have no depth. I'm just not. I mean, they did what they had to do and it's all about the season after next for them anyway. But I had them at 10 and I don't even know if they're going to be 10. Like, I just don't think that's a good team.
Yep. Oh, you had the Raptors here. I had the Sixers. West had the Celtics. At number 9, we will get to the Heat. I think the Heat and the Pacers are definitely teams, and maybe the Raptors a little bit. So here at number 9 is the Heat. I had the Heat all the way up at 7. Omari, this is where you have the Pacers. This is where I technically have the Celtics, and then Wes had the Heat right here at 9. My thing with the Heat is like, this was crazy to me. 37 wins is their lowest since, let's play a game. 37 wins is their lowest since when? What year? I want the chat involved as well. So I'll give you time to think about this. Year 18 of Spo coming up. This team has won 37 games or more since what year? Omari, do you think?
2018-19.
Okay. Wes, what do you think? The Miami Heat have won at least 37 games since what NBA season? Mr. Ray says 2007. Devon says 2015, maybe 2006. Wes has 2015. 07-08. This team has won 37 games or more since 07-08. Well done, Mr. Ray. Just insane consistency and...
Oh, they won 39 games in 18-19. Okay. I was like, I thought that was a down year. That's crazy though. Wow.
Yeah. So Robbie says, Bryce, why do you think you're higher on Miami? Seems like they got a weak starting front court. I still like Bam. I know that like he wasn't great offensively. I think he's awesome defensively. I'm kind of buying into Khalil Ware and what he can provide there. I think he ended up in a good spot for him and what his pre-draft questions were. I do think the backcourt is weird with Tyler Hero and Norm Powell. I just think to me, it feels like a play-in team. So maybe I'm too high, but I don't trust the teams below them because I don't trust Philly to be healthy. We just talked about Boston, the Pacers. I just not loving that roster without those two guys. You know, maybe the Raptors, I should just believe in their talent a little bit more. I think it's a Spo play and a consistency play. So yeah, so that's fair. If you don't like the Bam Ware fit, I do think that it fits because Ware can space the floor a little bit. So maybe I'm just a little more okay with that. But let's keep going here because the next team I think is one that will be fun to talk about as well. The Raptors ended up at 10. Oh, you were the highest team on the Raptors. So what were your thoughts with them?
Yeah, I have the Raptors 8
Yeah.
and I just like their roster. Like you look at their starting 5, like you have Emmanuel Quickley, you have Scotty Barnes, you have Brandon Ingram, who we didn't see with them last year just because of the injury. You've got RJ Barrett. You've got Jakob Poeltl. Like, that's a good starting 5. Like, I like Grady Dick off the bench. You know, I think Abaji was pretty solid for him last season. They got Sandro
Oh,
silly.
Mamu.
Mamu,
yeah.
Like, I like Mamu. Like, that's a good pickup. Like, they just have a decent roster. Like, I like their roster. I think they have a good head coach, and they just have a good roster. Like, I don't think that's a bad team at all. Like, Scotty Barnes, like, you put some, shooting, some defense around them. You've got a couple, guys who could be a go-to scorer. Brandon Ingram's good. Yeah, I feel better about them than Miami. I feel better about them than Boston, and I feel better about them than Indiana. I think they could be a top 8 seed.
So I have them at 10. I kind of agree that they have talent. I just don't think it fits. I will say this. It's year 3 of Darko. They've kind of had a weird trajectory. Last 4 years, it's been 48, 41, 25, 30. So their trajectory's been weird. I did put in my notes for this that they could be the surprise 6th seed. Like if they put it, here's what I think is most likely. They consolidate some of these number 2 options. As Mr. Ray says, Toronto said, get us as many 2nd and 3rd options as you can find. Then they fire the guy who made all those decisions.
That's the other thing. They're well positioned to make a swing for a star.
So that is my thing. I think if it's just this roster, I think they're a play-in team. If they consolidate a couple of these guys or something like that and go get a real dude that may end up on the market and the roster makes more sense, then I think that's when they make the play into a top 6 seed. Let's go ahead and round this out after Toronto, and then we can just get any final thoughts. Our average end up with the Pacers at 11, the Charlotte Hornets at 12, the Chicago Bulls at 13, and none of us love the Bulls, the Washington Wizards at 14, the Brooklyn Nets at 15 here. Any thoughts on any of those teams, O2? We kind of laughed off the Bulls earlier, so we probably don't need to go there.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about Indiana at the beginning, but they're just going to take a big step back, and there's no real way around that. I think I had Indiana 9, but I mean, they could easily be 11 or 12. And if you told me that the Heat or, any of those other teams ended up being better, it wouldn't surprise me at all. For them, it's mostly just can Ben Naff or could Jarris Walker or, one of those young guys take a massive step forward, and, now you kind of have something that can tie you over until guys get healthy, but they're not in great shape next season. They're going to take a step back.
Robbie says MPJ might average 30 plus on 10 3-point attempts for Brooklyn. Not if Cam Thomas has anything to say about it. No, Rob, you're right. Like, he's going to have a huge role. You're absolutely right there. Yeah. So, the Pacers, again, I think owning their 2026 pick is an important part and caveat of that conversation. The one team I do just want to mention is the Charlotte Hornets. If there is a Detroit jump for a team this year in the NBA, I think it's probably them. Their trajectory also not the right direction. 43, 27, 21, 19. That does kind of sound vaguely familiar to what Detroit did. Difference being, their star was already a little bit older. I think Cade is better than LaMelo Ball. But, I could see them doing it if things came together. I don't know who's going to play at center for that team. I also wonder if they don't make a jump, is this a LaMelo Ball trade conversation all of a sudden type of situation? So Charlotte's interesting. I like what they did in the draft. I like those players, but I don't love their front court. And if they don't make the jump, I think maybe some decisions start being made. Any other teams there? Wizards, Nets, Bulls, any thoughts, O2?
Nothing compelling, to be honest. Yeah, that's the lottery tier. And, we'll see which team was it.
Yeah. And it is, guys, it is an exciting lottery. There's some talent there. We will see. So this was fun. Hopefully you guys. Okay. So Maurice asked, which team is most likely to tear it down? Quick thought there, O2. Team most likely to tear it down. That was my initial thought as well, because Indiana's not doing that. Toronto's not going tear down. I think the other one option would be Milwaukee. And I mean, obviously that just means they decide to move on from Giannis.
Yeah. If they're if they're on a really bad trajectory by the trade deadline, you probably just have to cut bait at that point.
All right. This was fun. I enjoyed this. Hopefully this was informative. Oh, Wes says Hawks is a dark horse. That is interesting. Move on from Trey. KP doesn't work. And you just keep Jalen Johnson and Dyson Daniels, and you keep that wing room, but get rid of everything else. That's a sneaky one, Wes. I like it. I hope this was informative, guys. We talked about this, and I think we just thought that you guys that watch and listen to us are deep enough into the NBA depths that you would enjoy a full Eastern Conference preview. Western Conference probably doesn't make as much sense, but an Eastern Conference to talk about the landscape and where Detroit lands in that landscape, we thought would be a lot of fun. So hopefully you enjoyed it. It is off season, so we're always trying to come up with different ideas. Like I said, we have some fun stuff coming up. Omari Sankofa, the OG, will join us at some point in the next month or so. My former head coach, Jeff Jones, is going to join us at the end of the month when O2 has to take some time off, and we're literally just going to talk hoops. So I hope you guys will tune in for that. It'll be a lot of fun. It just won't be Pistons specific because we've done that for almost 200 episodes now. So we thought it'd be okay to take one episode off and do something a little bit selfish on account of me. Otherwise, we'll be back next week. Wes has his work cut out for him to come up with an outline and an episode theme and topic. Maybe we can play some cheat or sham or something. But thank you guys for joining us. Please hit the like button, subscribe. Make sure you're Substacking and Detroit Bad Boys and Free Press, taking in all the content. Enjoy your Sunday. O2, take it away, my guy.
Big thanks to our audio producer, Robin Chan, our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery Nichols. A big thanks to Wes Davenport, as always. And we'll talk to y'all next week.